I think what I would have done differently would have been to enjoy those moments where it's just one kid. Where sometimes you're like, oh, he woke up early, I'm not going to get to sleep, or this is so hard. Guess what? It is not hard with one kid. It's a fucking vacation, okay?
Isn't that insane?
But you don't know that until you have 3.
We thought we were so fucking busy before we had children. What were we doing?
Right.
Every weekend morning that we had just ourselves to worry about, every weekday that we had just ourselves to worry about. I think after 3, though.
And then you have your 4.
Being a mom is the toughest job there is, and it doesn't come with instructions. So it's okay if you don't have all the answers. We'll figure it out together. This is Mom Brain with Hilaria Baldwin and Daphne Oz.
Let's talk about your hyper organization then, because I'm amazed.
I'm not hyper organized.
You have 3 children, a full, thriving, insane career, and you don't lose things. So something is working for you that is not working for me.
I lost my corporate Amex last week, and I was like, yeah, it was not good.
Who went shopping?
No one, thank God.
Good.
But I was having a fight, not with my husband, with someone within my company. And I think I was so angry that when I got out of the cab, I didn't pull it out. And that's where it went.
And that's where it went.
Yeah.
You know, I had the same thing. So it actually was a fight that my husband and I had on Friday about very I don't think we could even like explain what it was about, and we're like totally over it and fine. But I lost 3 things this weekend, and I don't often do that, but I always know that I need to like check in, slow down, take a deep breath, because it's like it can get way worse.
Yes.
It just can kind of snowball.
Here's what I worry about more is I don't know that I lost something. And when I'm cleaning out my various bags or wallets or travel stuff, I'm like, oh, that's where that is. And then I'm like, I didn't even know it was missing, but hey.
I like when that happens and I find $20. One thing you just said, Hilaria, though, was that you were fighting about something that you don't even remember now, and it's clearly fine and all good. Do you find that in the chaos of being a mom and in the chaos of just being busy, period, do you pick fights? Do you wish that you didn't? I wish, I'll just speak for my own self, I wish that I didn't fly off the handle as quickly as I do with my husband in particular, because inevitably it is an irrelevant fight that never matters, that like we don't remember for 2 seconds later. But it creates this strife and this moment of agita in a world that's already, you know, our kids create a lot of chaos too. How do you get a hold of your own temper, or do you find that you've had these coping mechanisms that you've developed over the years so that you don't pick unnecessary fights?
Well, the good news, Daphne, is it's always his fault.
Oh,
so that's just the thing. I find that I'm a pretty namaste even person. Of course, we all have our moments, but I try to take a deep breath and have perspective and stand back and really listen to what the person is saying, because you don't want to like later on you're like, oh God, now I have to apologize, now I have to deal with all of that. And obviously that does happen sometimes, but I used to do it a lot more. I used to just really rage and yell and do that whole kind of thing. And I just got to the point where I was like, this is such a waste of time. I have to be really efficient. And so I need to listen to you right away, hear what you're saying. And if it's not working, I say, hey, you know what? We love each other, right? We want to be friends, right? We don't really need to do this, right? Let's skip the whole part of where we fight and let's get to the resolution part. So I try to do that because I always am trying to think about how I'm going to feel about it tomorrow. No matter what, even like right now, I can think like, how am I going to feel about this tomorrow? We're all sitting here. I want us to have a good time. I'm so excited that you're here. So just always being present, but then being able to be a little bit outside at the same time, I think has been a really great tool for me.
I love that. I wish for all of us that we would have that ability to step outside the body and say, you know what, tomorrow, how am I going to feel about this? Tomorrow, with some removal from the fiery Turkish emotions that I'm feeling about this in this moment, would I feel something differently? Would I understand your perspective better? And by the way, that's not just for husbands, although my husband inevitably gets the brunt of me being overwhelmed in a moment, because I try not to put that on my kids ever, obviously. But I do think that something as aware as that, as just being able to give yourself that quick. I think about this with eating sometimes. If I give myself, I call it my count to my age before I cheat type of rule. And it's, you know, if I count to 32 before I go in on the bag of Oreos, it's a different experience. You're very conscious of it. You indulge and you enjoy it, and it means something as opposed to this sort of mindless experience. And I like to think that there are elements of that to parenting too. That there are ways to give yourself a mental break so that you can stay namaste.
Namaste.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about in terms of parenting? I mean, I try to do that as well a lot with parenting and disciplining. So when one, so-and-so hits that person and so-and-so sticks their tongue out, or this person lied to you, and you have at least one child, 2 children. Your second one is 6?
4.
4. So you have one child that's older than my children.
Yes.
And, I've been noticing as Carmen, who's my 5-year-old, as she is getting older, the problems start to get a little bit bigger. And you really need to be very clear. They're less distractible. You need to be very clear. And I always want to parent her and teach her something that she is going to make her a better person, rather than shame her and just be angry in the minute because she just, made me mad.
I need that.
I know.
I feel like if I'm with them a lot, like on a vacation, my temper snaps a lot quicker, like my patience. Whereas if I'm working and I'm 9 to 5 and then I get home and I'm like, yes, I love you. This is why I had you. But if I'm with them 24/7, I'll snap quicker. And I want to do those teachable lessons. And I tell myself, but then sometimes they just piss me off. And I'm like, really, dude? You had to wrestle her down and she banged her head.
Yes.
And now she has a goose egg. Like, you a-hole.
Right.
Why'd you got to do that?
Right.
And they know. They
And
know
they
when you're at
know.
your edge,
Yes.
and they're like, needle,
Yes.
needle.
Yes.
Okay, wait. So obviously, for those who don't know, Rebecca is genitor of the eponymous label, Rebecca
genitor.
Minkoff. The
Generator.
the progenitor, whatever she created. She is Rebecca Minkoff of Rebecca Minkoff. I'm sure your closets, like mine, are filled with her beautiful clothing, accessories, handbags, new watches, jewelry, all this jazz. And you do have an extremely stressful, at times, I'm sure, obviously very creative, and because it is creative, sometimes draining career, but also hugely enlivening and exhilarating. How do you come home from work and turn off that energy valve and put new energy into the mom valve? How do you come home and remember, like, this is what I work for. This is what I made you for this moment, because I love to have this time together.
So I think it goes through peaks and valleys. I think that I try as much as I can when I get home to just put the phone away, not look at it, really be present with the kids. And then there's times where that's not possible. So like leading up to Fashion Week, 3 people on my team decided to go on a vacation when they probably shouldn't have, and I was doing their jobs plus 2 other people's jobs, and so my mind, I couldn't turn it off, right? And so even my son said to me, Mommy, you're not acting like my mommy right now, because even though I was there with him, I was being a little short, and I was trying to get him to bed early, and so I could go back on my phone at work. And so those are the moments where you're like, Jesus, but I know it's temporary. And I said, in 2 days I'm gonna be your mom again, I promise. My thing will be over and I'll be focused again. So I think I know that those periods of time happen, and they're particularly stressful. And I'm like, it's okay that I'm a little bit not with you and like sort of giving you half-ass playtime, but like that's temporary. I guess I just tell myself it's temporary, so it's okay.
I think there's an element of that where kids have to understand that they are not the center of
Correct.
the world. And
Correct.
you need to, yes, you can try, we can try our best to be there for them. And as we have multiple, as we all do, it gets harder and harder because this person needs something, that person needs something, and they're all your kids and they're all important. But then they can also see, like, Mommy has to go to work.
Right.
And by them seeing that, they are going to think about their own work one day and when they go out and when they're responsible for different things and that they must show up.
I think the thing that I keep going back to is I never felt damaged by my parents working, right? And they were there, but they weren't ever present like I feel the need to be with my kids or my husband feels the need. So I'm like, where did this guilt come from? Because I probably see my kids more than like a lot of people that work a 9-to-5 job due to the fact that I travel with them and whatever. I've made them a priority. And then I'm like, wait, where did this guilt come from? I don't know if you feel that way. Like, my parents were working and I had to play by myself and I had to figure it out.
Well, it's funny that you say that. My grandmother has 6 children. And in my mind, she is the archetype of maternal behavior. She's extraordinarily loving. Her family's so close-knit. She and my grandfather live on a farm. I mean, it's this wonderful sort of arrangement of this is what motherhood looks like in my mind. And yet when I think back on it and realize that she was also running for public office, she went back and got her theological degree late in life. She ran her own business. She was always doing these things that were investing in what made her happy and investing in the things that she knew she felt she had a calling to do in the world, the things that she thought would make the world better, things that she thought she could do the best, like whatever it ended up being. And it took me having one, maybe two kids before I realized that my version of motherhood, where very similarly to you, where every minute that I was away from my children, I felt guilty about it. And I felt like, oh, I'm robbing them this time with me. If I'm home with them, I'm missing out on career opportunities. If I'm at work, I'm missing out on motherhood opportunities. And that conflict and that friction was driving me insane, because you really can't win. And you're always feeling like you're failing if there's no opportunity to win. And it wasn't until I sort of stepped back and looked at my grandmother, who, again, for me is this archetype of what I should be aiming for. And I had to recognize, like, oh, but she clearly took time away. She clearly, and it didn't damage her kids,
right,
and it didn't make them think that she didn't love them, and it didn't make them feel like she didn't prioritize them. And it forced me to really re-engage this idea that it's quality over quantity. And that's not to say that, when I'm traveling for work, I don't miss them terribly or feel like I am, and my absence is very clearly and acutely known. But I do think it's a new thing. I think that we moms who became moms, maybe call it after, 2005, this experience of the trade-off being seen as an extreme negative for your child.
Right.
I don't think it was as present before. And maybe that's just I wasn't a mom before.
I think that they did feel that way. And I think your grandmother, if you take your grandmother, she's still...
Yeah.
Oh, so
very
if you
much
take
so.
your grandmother...
she'll be in
She'll
here.
be in here. She's our next guest.
That would be amazing.
That would be
amazing.
amazing. But I bet you, if you asked her... Because we also tend to idolize our parents and idolize our grandparents in some ways, unless there's something, profoundly wrong, of say, oh, well, they never felt this way and they never did this way. And actually, like, when we're not there, they still exist. They have those moments when the door is closed and they feel overwhelmed. They have those moments when, kids are kids. They probably begged her, don't go. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that happened. It's just, there was this level of, like, elegance of, like, keeping it together, and then maybe they just kept it behind closed doors.
And they didn't have social media to document all of
it. Exactly.
No, my mom is a good sounding board for all of this too, because I do think, obviously the child remembers it differently than the parent, and obviously she's a mother of grown-up children now, so she has some level of remove from her own motherhood. But also, mothers forget so quickly what their experience was. Everyone's experience is rosy in past tense. It's or way worse than it was in past tense. So I just don't know how accurate any of the memory is. But in my mind, it was this perfect balancing act. And I think now there are a lot of demands on our time. Even our time that is our own sometimes feels like it's being robbed from us because we're always on call. I mean, email, you're always on call. Phone calls, you're always on call. Anyone who wants to reach you kind of always can. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's that our brains are never off. And as a mom, your brain is never off anyway, mom brain. But it's also that you feel this constant tug of the other. There's so many selves of mom, right? There's so many versions of you that are needed every day. And I feel like maybe something that I struggle with is how do I reshuffle this myself so that the mom self can be there and be and every once in a while just be that, I think that's...
No, I heard you say, and tell me if this is correct, but I heard you talk about how there is no such thing as balance.
Nope.
No, balance is just a mirage. That being said, you also talk about how you don't take meetings before 9:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And you never are away from your children for more than 5 days.
Wow.
Am I correct?
You are correct.
I did my research.
You did the research. I love it.
That being said, like, what's your advice to other mothers in terms of trying to find the line between being an extremely successful, beautiful businesswoman? You look like you have it all together. You're sitting right here in front of
Hair
us.
and
You
makeup
look
this morning.
Oh, that always helps.
Good glam
I'm gonna
does help.
sleep in it all week. I'm not lying.
Wouldn't that be great
We're
to
going to
just
interview her again on
go
Friday. See
into
how
your
that goes.
casket and just
Seriously.
wake up looking like that?
And then also being there and being a mom and where, if there's no balance, where's that point that you're trying to find?
I think that each person has to explore within themselves their limits and not look at other moms, and especially moms on social media, like how they're doing it. And I think you have to go, what am I comfortable with and what am I not? So I know if I don't do drop off I'm missing out on something. If I get home too many nights, like past, 7, something's wrong for me. If I'm gone for more than 5 days, a kid comes with me, even though that makes my trip harder. I don't sleep, like all those things. So I think I spent a year or two, especially after each kid, because it changes, like exploring like, what are those boundaries? And then trying to remain as firm as possible. And I realize it's not possible for all people to do that. But I try as much as I can that I know I'm saying no to things. I know I'm making sacrifices with friends or with never getting to see Daphne and having dinner,
Pathetic. We are the worst.
We've been trying to plan it for like a month. But so I think you sort of know what are the sacrifices you're going to make. And hopefully it all equals out, even though I think that balance is a bad word because then you're striving to achieve something which can't exist. Mm-hmm. And there are times when it's like terrible and you are working every night for a few weeks straight and you're not seeing your family. And then there are times when you don't have that. So I think it's like finding your own sense of like, what are my boundaries and how do I keep that as much as possible?
I wonder if boundaries might be a better word than balance, because you're right. Balance implies that there's like you have equal work, equal kids. And I don't think that that's ever the case. I kind of think it recalibrates. So some days I'm an A mom, a B wife, a C friend, a D employee, and the next day it can completely, rejigger. I wonder though, because you said, after every child it changes, and you've 3 and they range in age from 7 to 7 months almost. My boy Nico will eventually be, he doesn't know this yet, arranged marriage with my little one, Nika.
Love it. I'm in.
Nico and Nika, you heard it here. Hashtag everything. I wonder what you would tell the version of mother that you were for Luca, your first, now that you've had 3.
Oh.
How did you do things differently? And would you have done things differently if you had the benefit of hindsight?
I think what I would have done differently would have been to enjoy those moments where it's just one kid. Where sometimes you're like, oh, he woke up early, I'm not going to get to sleep, or this is so hard. Guess what? It is not hard with one kid. It's a fucking vacation, okay?
Isn't that insane?
But you don't know that until you have 3.
But it's, by the way, when you have your
Or 2.
first, you're like, when I had my first, John and I would wake up at, 4 a.m. when she decided to wake up for the first time and look at each other and be like, we thought we were so fucking busy before we had children. What were we doing?
Right.
Every weekend morning that we had just ourselves to worry about, every weekday that we had just ourselves to worry about, what were we doing? And you have your first and you're like, oh gosh, this is so challenging and my life is so full now. And then you have your second and it's like, you just keep getting thrown through the ringer. I think after 3 though.
And then you have your 4. It actually, I think the biggest difference is 1 to 2.
Yeah,
big
1
time.
to 2 is really
100%.
tough because you do think, all of a sudden you're a parent and you think your life is so tough.
Right.
Which it is. In fairness, it is way
shock.
tougher than it was before.
Yeah.
And your entire focus is centered around this one child.
Yes.
And then you have another one, you're like, whoa. I don't know how to be like all I can be for this person to this person as well. And then this first person is complaining that all of a sudden this new person is here and it should not have been invited and must be sent back immediately. And then, but once you have 3 and then 4, like literally there was no difference between 3 and 4.
The zoo is already
whatsoever.
in place. It's just new animals.
I'm slowly trying to convince my husband for the 4th.
Oh, do it.
But he's like, I already don't have enough time for the 3 of them and you, and I don't talk.
I'll call him.
But
Okay,
talk
cool.
about that. When do you and Gavin, if ever, get alone time?
Oh God, we have to schedule these dates.
How are you going to have a 4th? Is there sex? Tell us everything.
Do you really want to know how
Yes.
broken my vagina is
Oh
right
my
now? Should we go there?
Mom brain. Mom badge.
This baby came out of me so fast that I think he broke something on the way out. So I'm currently getting vagina therapy to fix it.
This is a new thing. This is like actually
know
being
about this.
No,
Talk to
I've been
me.
hearing about this a lot. I heard about it first because in France, apparently, after you give birth, it is commonplace. It is paid for by the state for women to receive pelvic floor rehabilitation, which is essentially an intense version of Pilates, which helps you get obviously control of your pleasure zones back, which is really important. Gets control bladder, gets control of your lower abdominals, and I really think that getting that core strength back is actually a huge part of mom's recovery mentally, because that's the center of your body. If you have if you feel like loose and out of control, which I do for a long time after giving birth, because it never dawned on me that there would have been rehabilitative exercises specific for post childbirth.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've been talking about this because I was really intrigued by this French practice, and more people are saying there's vagina therapy now in like a totally
But
not.
is that what it is? So I mean, I'm a yoga teacher, and that's what I do with my postpartum moms. That's what I do for myself. I notice a big difference between week 1, week 2, and week 3, just in terms of the amount of Kegels I'm doing, the amount of core work, not as in abs, but just core strengthening of pulling everything back together and becoming myself again. Is that what vagina therapy is?
Well, I'm calling it vagina
Oh,
therapy.
so it's not
It
actually
is
called that because
no, it's pelvic floor work.
Okay.
So she's teaching me like
Great.
how to properly Kegel.
Are
like,
we all
which-
Kegeling right
Yeah.
now?
I just did when you said it, Hilaria, I was like, there
If you
it
heard
is.
me choke a little bit, it's because I was like, sucking it.
So she's teaching me that. She's also teaching me there's a massage you have to do internally, which my husband loves to participate in.
That's nice.
I thought part of my muscle was bone, and she's like, that's your muscle. That's how hard it is, and it has to relax because the act of having an orgasm is relaxing
Right.
and convulsing. So she's just teaching me a lot about my anatomy, which I didn't know.
Isn't that
and
funny
helping.
that you've birthed 3 times though? And similarly, I think we are sadly uneducated about our own anatomy and about what goes where and what not. Obviously, we're not talking birds and bees people. We're talking about like just you by yourself, understanding how things come back together and how things do reorganize after the incredible birthing process. And I think that's really important. I think it's important for connectivity and with yourself first, because that's
You have
part
to know
of
what you're doing
Yeah.
before you can tell someone else what to do.
I think it's one of the biggest problems where people say don't do anything for 6 to 8 weeks afterwards. And maybe that means don't run a marathon. And people always, will write on my Instagram as they see me doing like small stretches and small little exercises. Like I'm not going out and like, doing tons of push-ups and stuff like that. I'm doing very small little movements that start to take care of myself and bring me back to me. And that's very frowned upon in our culture. Just don't sit there and don't do anything. Lay down, nurse a baby. That's all you're supposed to do. And I do think it's this kind of like, I'm going to close my eyes, not look down there until everything somehow heals enough that I feel like I'm semi myself again. And a lot of people never get there.
They never get there.
And it just kind of spirals and gets more and more difficult to return to yourself. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of course, being fit on a daily, in your regular life. But when I'm pregnant, I continue to move. I want my circulation to go. I want to be working on my Kegels. I want to be working on my arms and my legs to be able to not only like carry my kids, but just to, relax my shoulders and feel better. And then it helps me so well during my labor and delivery. And then, postpartum, I tend to snap back pretty quickly because there is that just awareness and connectivity to myself.
I just get so tired after giving birth. And I that's why, look, I've been a healthy eater for a long time. I grew up, I eat healthy foods because I find them delicious, and the way that I like to make them, I find them delicious. But I find I recommit to it even more in pregnancy and post-pregnancy, because that to me is the first way I start to give back to myself. It's with food that I feel like it's encouraging milk. It's making me feel like I'm getting my fitness back without it's giving me a way to feel some kind of control or like there is some kind of support system around me. But I want to go back really quickly because I think we got to the vagina part quickly.
Wait. But I want to finish. I want to finish your thought for a second, and we'll go back to the vagina part.
Yes.
That I'm now in my next cocktail party. I'm not going to call it vagina therapy, but the two of you guys almost tricked me into doing that. No, but I don't think one thing that bothers me is that people will see that my commitment to fitness and they'll be like, whoa, but that's, I want to be able to eat. And just kind of what you said, I am tired. I'm tired too.
Yeah.
And I'm not, again, it's not me going out and doing a whole hour, but it's just realizing that even though it's hard, it's so worth it. And it actually gives you more energy.
Totally.
This time around, right after having this baby, I had pneumonia when I delivered him. I was so sick. And my neighbor, she made me these breastfeeding cookies. They're basically chocolate chip cookies that you're like, all right, whatever. And I make so much milk anyway, so I don't need the extra cookies. But I just was like eating chocolate chip cookies for like a week or two afterwards because it was so easy and nothing tasted like that much anyway. So that you could like taste like a little bit of sweetness because I was so congested. But I think that there is an element of, yes, you need to take care of your body and you need to relax, but don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what, I am tired and I need to get moving a little bit. And I know, again, with that whole perspective that we started talking about, I know that I'm going to be better for myself, better for my children, and I'm going to feel better in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. And that little bit of investment in yourself goes such a long way. And I've personally seen the cumulative effects of, and I know this is something that you talk about all the time, Hilaria, like when you do 10 minutes. And I think you call them your found moment workouts, stolen moment, hiding in your bathroom, wherever it is that you need to be, where no one's going to disturb you for these 10 minutes that you are, I'm saying it to every mom out there, you are entitled to 10 minutes of alone time every single day. And if that's all you get, every time you do it, you get stronger. Every time you do it, you feel better. And I totally agree. It does boost your energy, although it's really hard to get into it. And I sometimes will do workouts in like regular workouts, 10 minutes of arms or something in regular clothes, just because that's all I can get to that day. But I do think, however it is that you're reinvesting in yourself, it can be food, it can be working out, it can be 10 minutes of tea by yourself, it can be, listening to a podcast. Whatever it ends up being.
Listening to this
podcast, pretty please. We would really all be much better if we felt like we were allowed to do that, because you are a better mom, a better version of yourself, a better wife, a better everything you're trying to be when you have that experience of self-love.
So
back to vagina.
Back to vaginas.
Yes.
So, but more than vagina, more about relationships. So obviously a huge portion of your time is devoted to work, a huge portion to your kids. What time is left over for you personally and for your marriage?
I would say not very much of either. I think we have decided, and is that, while they're young, our focus of our time together is as a family. He would love to go on date night once a week. He would love that. And I can get there like once a month. And I would love it to be more than that, but then I feel guilty, and then we're at dinner and he knows I'm thinking about the kids, and like I already had to work late twice this week. So I think he's okay sort of putting that off a little bit, but I think he definitely would love more and I would love more, but I just don't know how to get there and how to then not see the kids.
Yeah.
So that's something we're working on for sure.
What's his, is he a hands-on dad?
He is super hands-on. He is like super dad,
And
which I am so grateful for.
Does he
really
see the
is.
kids
It's
more
amazing.
during the day, or?
He does not. He works full time, and he travels a little bit, not as much as he used to, but he is there. Like we are there every night, almost. Probably each of us has to work late 1 to 2 nights a week, and we're always making sure the other one's home.
That's home.
So
amazing.
yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, he knows that sleep is important to me, and since I can't get unattached from my little piglet at night, who needs to eat at the buffet every hour, he lets me sleep in the morning and takes the elders. And like yesterday morning, I shot out of bed at like 7:15. He's like, "Go back to sleep. I got it under control.
Oh,
Go
that's
back to sleep."
amazing.
So it's awesome.
It is a partnership. I mean, having seen you
Totally.
guys in action, it is fluid. Very much you can see the equivalency, the sharingness that you guys have around your kids. And that, I mean, I obviously love to see my Rebecca in person, but I love to watch her on Instagram too, because she and her family travel a lot. And I think traveling with small kids is something that people are always a little terrified of, right? Especially when they're as small and close together as yours are, Becky. And I think that one of the things that I always am marveling at is like, Gavin or you's got Nico in the carrier and the other one's in front, and they're just traipsing around. They're eating, pasta vongole, and there's nothing, and there's nothing, there is no terror. And I think that is something, there are two emotions around parenting that I think need to be eradicated and stomped out. It's my personal mission to get rid of them: guilt and fear. Because they rob you of the joy. They rob you of this feeling of any kind of agency and any kind of power that you have in this very formative time for your children, yes, but for you also. Like I have goosebumps right now because I talk about becoming version 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0 of myself with each new child, and allowing myself to go through that process of whatever that uncovering of the new self looks like. But anyway, I love to watch your version of parenting that feels like you seize it by the horns. Was that something intentional, or did that sort of just develop from your person? You're the rock and roll romantic, so I mean, did that just happen naturally, or was it?
My mom said to me that like her goal when we were little was that we would just always have a lot of fun. So the only terror I think I had was in the very beginning with my son. I was maybe slightly germophobic, and then that was completely eradicated once he started crawling, and I was like, there is no control. And then with my daughter, who was like a terror as a little girl, especially traveling, she would like eat ice from the seat of the airplane and then ride on the floor and pick up stuff, and I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't care. So once that little bit of terror went away, I just was like, let me make all these moments fun and try to have them feel the sense of like fun and adventure. The guilt, I don't know how to get rid of the guilt. But I think, it's just making sure that like they're always lighthearted and like I have friends that are fearful on the playground and they have to follow their kids around and their kids sense that, you know, like they're always worried. And I'm just like, you know what, if they fall, they fall. If they hit their head, it's okay.
But
you know?
can never, I found that you can never teach somebody that. They have to live it.
They
must live it. Just like we had to. I was the quintessential first, super nervous first pregnant woman. And I followed Carmen around everywhere. She's like, Rafa just got stitches for the first time the other day. And that was my first experience with that. It was so upsetting. And we're okay afterwards. But I needed to go through that. And I needed to be allowed to be afraid. And, I have had them when they say, Mommy, don't go to work. I need to be allowed to feel guilty. And then I need to be present for that and then sort my emotions out. So it's almost like I think the only way to eradicate that is to be aware, say, hey, I am scared of this and I need to fix that. But no matter how many people tell me, oh, it's okay if you drop the passy on the floor and on the ground in New York City and then put it back in their mouth. Like that wasn't okay for me. It just wasn't.
Right.
And people have different levels of it. I also have found that definitely with this baby, I did get slightly more germophobic again because when I delivered him, I had pneumonia.
Right.
My two middle boys had the flu, not in flu season, by the way. We couldn't even, deal with it because it was out of fashion. It was out of season. Everybody was telling us, and we couldn't find the medicine for it. And then Carmen came home with pink eye. So it just felt so unfair.
When
just
it rains, it pours.
When it rains, it poured. And it was just this thing of like, my baby did not get sick. And I was super hormonal, upset. I was sure. I look at my baby every single day as I'm like hacking on him uncontrollably, saying, my baby's going to get sick and he's going to die. That is my fourth child around. I was sure that that's what's going to happen. Obviously, I was overtired and had just dealt with everything. We know that we definitely have terrible mom brain when we just deliver a baby. But I washed myself in between. They told me that he had to live in a separate room. I had to take a bath in between taking care of my sick children on one side and go over to the other. And it was like so hectic. So you bet you everybody is washing their hands when they come into the house because I was like, if you make me go through that again. That being said, Leo licked a fountain the other day. And I was just like, okay, put my hands up in the air and you're fine. But I think there is a level of once you go through something hard, you're like, I'm not doing that again. I can't do that again.
No, experience cures all. Or at least gives you the resilience to know you're going to be able to deal with it when it happens. I grew up basically at my grandparents' farm, so I think I was probably like shoveling manure at some point very early on. I probably err on the side of allowing too many things to pass through my children's mouths that shouldn't be there.
But manure is probably cleaner than what we find on the streets of New York. I would just say it's just grass that's passed through some like animal body. It's fine.
I had to fail this last week. I got on the airplane. I wiped all the seats down.
Oh yeah.
And he was like gnawing on the armrest, and I was like, whatever. I wiped it down, but he fully got something from doing that, And even the sort of was like, oh, you don't know how dirty that is, and I was like, it's okay, I cleaned it off with a wipe,
with a water wipe.
With a water wipe
in those wipes. I do have a lifetime supply of those everywhere I go, though. I mean, it's you want to take precautions, especially on airplanes. I want to ask a question, if I can, about going through the process of growing a company before you became a mom. Do you see that there are corollaries for you of like the birthing process of that experience? Were there hard things about being a businesswoman? Were there things that taught you about the resilience and the no fear and the trust in yourself? And how do you sort of navigate that now that you have other babies that are also requiring of your creative and investment?
I think that I feel very much that I couldn't have done what I did with a kid in building my business. And I know that some people start businesses when they're 9 months pregnant and they have a great time of it. But I think it took all of me and it took all my time. I worked till 11 every night prior. I worked weekends. I traveled tons for work. And so I think it was this all-consuming, Gavin and I were both building our careers. And so we're like, high five, we'll see you on the flip side. And so I think that time period of putting in that type of hard work makes you strong, makes you resilient. And it wasn't easy. There was so much failure. There were so many hard times. And I talk about that very freely because I don't want people to think it was a sugar-coating, Cinderella story. And I think that honestly, sometimes having a kid can be harder. And sometimes it's way easier than birthing a company. And I think now there's these peak moments where, whether it's Fashion Week or you're launching a new category, that you feel that intensity again, where you're like, oh, this is what that was like for 10 years straight. And now like handbags it's not on autopilot by any means, but like people know of the brand in that way. And then you go to launch a new category or doing the podcast, which we launched last week. Like,
congratulations. So
Thanks.
exciting.
Thanks.
What's it called?
Well, it's called Superwomen with Rebecca Minkoff.
Yes, you are.
Hopefully you'll both be guests.
Yes.
But even that, it was fun to go back and learn something new. And I really dove in and I was like, okay, I got to write all the questions. I got to write, like, figure this out by myself. No one handed me the podcast and said, here. And so I think it was nice to have that feeling again of building something from scratch and trying to figure it out. And as we air episodes, like what works, what doesn't, and why. And I like that.
I love that.
I started a yoga studio a long time ago.
While you were pregnant?
Well, no, way
Okay.
before Alec,
I was
way
gonna say,
before.
Jesus.
No.
Miracle
We
woman.
started a couple yoga studios, and I look back at that and I don't think I could ever do it again. And it was just like the long nights and I lived there. I was there 365 days a week. I would start at 5 a.m. I'd finish most days probably around 10:30 p.m. And I would just be there every single day. And there's just kind of that, it's sort of that eyes towards the horizon of like, I have to get there. And you don't know exactly where it's going to go, right? It's this kind of feeling in the dark. I think this is my vision. This is what I believe in. But how can I get there? I don't know. It's putting one foot in front of the other. And I have this idea, I have this feeling after becoming a mother, like, I don't think I could do that again. There's this strength that I think that you have before having children it changes a little bit, and just I don't know if it's just priorities or whatever, and now it's a well working machine, and so you can manage it and sort of handle it a little bit better, but that like just those grueling
It's
nights,
all in.
and that's all that you're focused on. And so the women who can do things while they're pregnant, while they have children, it's just mind-blowing.
Beyond mind blowing.
You only know what you know, though, right? I think some people that I've talked to who are in that process of starting businesses as they're super pregnant or just given birth or whatever it might be, you have to do it. I think that's part of wanting to be a mom and to have other elements that you feel obligated to, to fulfill on. You stretch 24 hours in the day somehow magically. Although I agree with you. I don't know how you could possibly spend, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. doing anything fully if you were also called to home. I want to ask something because I think our listeners are really going to be curious. Obviously you talk openly about having had natural births and water births, which are awesome, and Becky has video of this happening that I haven't seen yet, but I'm kind of like angling to get to see it at some
Anytime.
You did the video.
I did video for all three.
Yes.
Yes.
Did Gavin record it? Was it?
He did.
Did you watch them afterwards?
I watched them all the time. We lost 2 of the videos for a few years.
No.
They were found.
Oh, thank goodness.
And I spent a Friday night with a glass of wine watching them over and over again.
And you're like on the verge
It's
of
like
tears
a weird
right now.
form of therapy for me. I don't know.
How did that, seeing yourself deliver a baby, did that affect the second and third time around, or were you still just kind of like, that was so great, that was a great experience, and now I'm going to have a different experience?
I just go, I can't believe we do this. I can't believe that this is how we, took over the planet, right?
Totally.
And that we keep doing it. Like, it's so intense.
Yeah.
And I keep trying to remember that intensity, like, that you feel in your uterus as your cervix is, and it's just like nothing replicates that feeling.
And did you videotape yours?
No.
I didn't either. I wouldn't let Alec. He takes a video as soon as they put the baby on my chest.
Right.
That's the moment that I'm
Right.
like, I will remember this moment. And that I when I see it, I cry every single time.
Yeah.
But that's
think
amazing.
I think I wanted to remember how intense something could be and how painful, and we survive it.
Yeah.
And we are stronger for it. Like, I just remember when I was with my first, and I'm not deeply religious in any aspect of the word, but I was like, I'm alone in this, and it's just me, and if there is a God, that's it, and no one's gonna help me do this. I mean, yeah, people will help you, but like, no one is making that baby truly come out except
for you. Yeah.
But so to be that alone and like then come through that,
it's empowering.
it's really empowering.
It's scary and then empowering. Now, this is an interesting dynamic we were talking about before, because you didn't do epidurals on any of yours.
No.
She did on 2 out of the 3, correct?
2 out of 3.
And I did on all 4, but I never like thought about it that much because again, I'm just kind of going with the flow with everything. So like the first time around, and I'm a yoga super namaste person, and I have a very high pain tolerance. By the way, I broke my hip straight through when I was 25 years old just from walking on it little by little. So it's not in terms of that, but I just kind of like I'm like, okay, we're doing this. Let's do this now. So the first time around, I didn't really think about it. I did no childbirth classes. I mean, I did tons of like prenatal yoga and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what to expect. And I love my doctor. I kiss the ground that he walks on. He's super, super Western, and I'm like the hippie. So it's actually a yin and a yang that works really well. I always love people with like a different opinion, and then we can like spar off of each other. That's why I married my husband. But they were like, okay, because my water didn't break, and I was in labor for a long time, and so he said, I'm going to give you an epidural, then I'm going to break your water. And I said, how about we do this? You break my water, then I decide if I want an epidural. And then some like the nurses kind of like started snickering. I was like, okay, or we could do it your way. And then we did it that way, and it was fine. I've heard horror stories on both sides. I've heard horror stories of people that the epidural didn't go well, of reactions to it. I've heard horror stories of people who didn't get an epidural and they lost the strength because they were in so much pain. Obviously, we know that every single pregnancy, labor, delivery is different, so who knows where that line is. The second time around, I did almost the entire labor. I was in labor for 23 hours, did almost the entire thing without an epidural. The third time around, see, it's confusing when you have so many. Third time around, I was doing the same thing, and I was laboring on my own. And then the anesthesiologist comes in. She's like, why do you women do this? She says, it will not make a difference. I give epidurals all day long. That is my job. Why do you wait? She says, it will not make a difference. And now there's something called a walking epidural, which I experienced with number 3. And I kind of looked at her and I'm like, well, I did it this way before, and it worked. So I'm just going to kind of like stick with what I was doing before. And then the fourth time around, I was induced because of this whole complication, which actually was like a lovely, lovely experience. And again, if you told me 5-6 years ago before I had children that was going to be my story, I'd be like, shut up. Like, go away. You don't know me. I do handstands for a living. And so, I mean, I'm very interested to hear your take on this because you're such a strong advocate, which is so admirable. I'm like, and my mouth is completely open with the strength that you have and that you recorded it and then you did it again.
And I watched it.
And you watched
it. Again, I had no idea when I went into this, but I watched The Business of Being Born, and I decided that the risks of Pitocin, induction, then labor slowing down, then emergency C-section because you're not progressing. I thought that was a risk that I was not willing to experience. Obviously, if I needed to have a C-section because there was something that went wrong, totally willing to do that. But I didn't want to introduce something that would potentially lead to that outcome. And I think the statistics are 30% more likely to have a C-section if you do get an epidural. And I said, you know what? With that information, the fact that we've been doing this for 10,000 years, my mom's generation, most women did it without it. I said, I want to see if I can tap into something that is bigger than me, more powerful than me, and if I can come out the other side. And so I think once I did it, it was awful. It was not easy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I just decided, if I did it once, I can do it again. And I think when you go into the second time, you know what's going to happen. You're like, oh God, I'm going for it again, and I can't believe it. And then you do it. And then with my third, I labored in a hotel room close to the hospital because Brooklyn's too far away to labor. And I literally was like, guys, should I just go to the hospital and get this epidural? Should I do it? And both Gavin and Latham were like, this is not what you wanted. Like, let's just keep going. And I had that moment there, like, should I do this on my third? But then what if it did end up in a C-section? That I'd never forgive myself, if that was the reason why I got one. So I just was like, you know what? It's going to be terrible and we're going to get through it. And the minute my water broke, I started crying because I was like, oh God, it's about to get fucked up. Yeah. It's about to get like gorilla style primitive. I'm going to start moaning and screaming. And then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, I could do that again.
But do you ever get to the point, because what somebody said to me, as obviously you chat about it with a lot of different people, but what somebody said to me was, would you get a tooth pulled without anesthesia?
Definitely not.
That's where the line is. That's the boundary.
I don't know. But I don't know. There's not another human involved in your tooth pulling.
Correct.
But I think that there's well, I will say this, having gone back and forth, and it's interesting to me that you had that moment of terror with your third, because I kept thinking every time it'll feel like going over a roller coaster, where the first time you go over, you're like, oh shit, we're getting to the top, and then you fall, and it's like, okay, and then the second time you go and you kind of anticipate what that experience is going to be like, and it's okay. It was the third time for me that I got scared of like, what is going to happen differently here? And it was because I had two very different births. The first time around I was induced, all the medication, after 29 hours of labor, I ended up getting the epidural 15 minutes before I gave birth, which was crazy. But it was an extremely difficult recovery in terms of I shouldn't say extremely. I was actually fine, but it was a lot of pain. It was a lot of recovery time. It was also my first, and I think your body is learning with you how to do this. And when you say you tapped into something that's bigger than we are and that women have been doing forever and ever, that was something very interesting to me, in that I sort of learned a lot about I learned a lot about pregnancy, and I thought I knew a lot about motherhood, but I didn't know a lot about birth, because I, of course, not because I'm so go with the flow, but because I'm so disorganized, had not taken any birthing classes or anything leading up to that. The second time with my son, we did all natural, and my recovery from that was so much better. I mean, just in terms of my mood, my milk came in faster. The recovery itself was easier. I felt like myself again. And I don't know, I can't say that's because it wasn't medicalized, but that was my experience. From one to the other, it was a completely different thing. So then going into my third, I just had this weird terror around, will it be like my first or like my second? And
how was it?
Not surprisingly, it was like neither of them. It was completely its own. My third, Domenica, her name means Sunday, because I went to the hospital with my water broke on the bright blood moon that Sunday in December last year. And she was supposed to be born. She was my third. Everyone promised me she'd come fast. I was already a week overdue. I was like 41 plus weeks. This little girl, my lovely Sagittarius, no one rushes her. No one rushes baby out of the womb. She was going to stay there as long as she damn well pleased, and she came on a Monday. But I was like, well, your name's still Sunday, so take that. But it was petrifying in a lot of ways. That I'm glad to hear you say. I'm glad I wasn't alone, because I think you hope that you'll just become a veteran and everything will feel commonplace. And the reality is, motherhood puts you on your ass almost every day, and that, I think, is what is so valuable about having a forum like this where we can come together and talk about it, because your experience, Becky, is different than anyone else's we're going to talk to. And I could sit here and chat with you about it all day, and I think we're probably
my favorite subject.
Have like a repeat visit, because
I
you're
watch
amazing.
birth. I follow all these birth people. I still watch them
All
every
these
day.
birth people.
Yes,
I did that before my second.
Badass mother birther, crazy stuff.
Oh
The
yeah,
ones
And
where they're like walking in the kitchen, they catch their own babies.
Just everything. The amount of breech births, like vaginal breech births, she shows is fascinating.
But can we talk about people who like give birth in a toilet? How do you ever not know you're
not
pregnant?
know that, yeah.
I don't know. I just
missing
felt like I had
all
to
the
pass some
signals.
gas, and oops, a baby came
Oh
out.
my god, Becky, tell us what's up next for you and what we should pay attention to in the world of Rebecca Minkoff.
Definitely download, subscribe, rate, and review my podcast, which is out, Superwomen. What else is next? We are launching our eyewear, which I've been teasing on the gram.
Amazing.
So if you need some sunglasses in the depth of winter to protect your eyes, get them.
Amazing. Well, we love you, and we thank you for being here with us.
Thanks
on
for having
Mom
me.
Brain.
Yeah.